Coming to you from Strings and Things Studio in Ventura, California, I'm Karin.
I am Anne.
And I'm Kaity.
And this is the Strings Unraveled Book Club.
Woo! Welcome. If we sound different today, we have to record via Zoom again, but yeah, it should be a normal episode besides that. So what are we talking about today?
So this month we did my book pick, which was my first time reading Danielle Steele's Flying Angels. I'm going to read the synopsis real quick. World War II brings together 6 remarkable young flight nurses who face the challenges of war and its many heartbreaks and victories as unsung heroes in this inspiring novel by author Danielle Steele. This is my first time reading her.
Same.
So the synopsis is about Audrey Parker's life changes forever when Pearl Harbor is attacked on December 7th, 1941. Her brother, a talented young Navy pilot, had been stationed there, poised to fulfill their late father's distinguished legacy. Fresh out of nursing school with a passion and a born gift for helping others, both Audrey and her friend Lizzie suddenly find their nation on the brink of war. Driven to do whatever they can to serve, they enlist in the Army and embark on a new adventure as flight nurses. Risking their lives on perilous missions, they join the elite medical air evac transport squadron and fly into enemy territory almost daily to rescue wounded soldiers from the battlefield. Audrey and Lizzie make enormous sacrifices to save lives alongside an extraordinary group of nurses. As growing up in the South, Prue, a selfless leader with a heart of gold, and Emma, whose confidence and grit push her to put everything on the line for her patients. Even knowing that they will not achieve any rank and will receive little pay for their efforts, the Flying Angels will give their all in the fight for freedom. They serve as bravely and tirelessly as the men they rescue on the front lines in daring airlifts and are eternally bound by their loyalty to one another. And that's as far as I'm going with that.
Okay.
So overall, what were your thoughts? I'm going to go last.
It was slow and lacked detail, but I liked the window being opened on these women's activity.
Nicely said.
And
I found it. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, that's all.
I found it disappointing because I was excited about the subject matter, and the synopsis that we read initially sounded like exciting. I'm like, oh, I want to know more about this.
Yeah.
But then we learned little to hardly anything about it. For a book that was so slow, it also went so fast that all of a sudden all these things had happened, and you were like, okay, well, I guess we're in the future now a couple years, or I guess that person's gone now, or it sort of read to me almost more like a screenplay.
Yeah,
like it would make a good movie, and the story was fine.
Hallmark Channel.
The story was fine, but it needed to be fleshed out a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting because there was so many of her books become movies, right? So that writing style hasn't hurt her any. But so much of it was lacking detail but restating things.
Yeah.
Like when Prue talks about her brothers all the time, or she thinks her thoughts drift to them regularly. And she just says the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
One brother is older and cautious. The other brother is reckless and daring. Okay, we know that about them.
Yeah.
So you could say it a different way to remind the reader. You could give an example of how they're reckless and dangerous or cautious, and then we would have some depth to the characters. Almost even the main characters are kind of one-dimensional.
I think there were too many characters. I don't know why there needed to be 6 girls when I think the story would have been just as it would have been more effective in my mind if it had just focused maybe on the initial 2. You have Audrey and Lizzie, and we spend the first half of the book with just those 2, and we develop their relationship, and we know about their families more than the other 4 girls that we're gonna meet. but some of them we spend 2 minutes with. Like,
Yeah. I think that this is a small main cast for Danielle Steele. If I remember catching any of those miniseries in the 90s, that's her style though, is like a dynastic group of main characters.
yeah.
But I didn't love it.
So I really only kept track of 5. I guess one of the characters was so small. I really didn't connect with her.
There's Audrey and Lizzie, the initial 2. There's Prue and Emma. There's the girl from the South whose name I don't remember.
Louise.
And there's Alex. Yeah. Louise. And Alex is like the one that comes from the posh family, but her family has all the orphans.
Yeah, see, she spent all her time with, it's almost like
degree of
importance went down.
Yeah, Prue was with the orphans. Alex was the American family.
Yes. Yeah. So I found a few reviews on Amazon and Goodreads that sort of pretty much summarize how I felt. 1 star, shame on Steele and her team. What a stretch to call this book historical fiction, and a slap in the face to the history, honor, and memory of the real flying angels. This book is nothing more than a few key historical words thrown in an otherwise lackluster, boring book that failed to thoroughly characterize or link the 6 main characters.
Yeah.
This person read half of the book wondering if Steele or her ghostwriter were going to get to the point besides elementary character descriptions. This book is nothing but fluff to sell copies for an already accomplished author. Save your time and money for real historical fiction, and for an author who actually puts time into research instead of just taking something inspiring from a time period and sadly winging it. No pun intended. That was from just unnamed Amazon customer. And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much it. I was taken in. I had never read Danielle Steele. I should have known. I thought, well, she's written all these books. Something must be about it, right?
Yeah, like, why should you have known? She's very popular and very successful.
Yeah.
And the cover, I thought this was a book about this real historical group of women who were empowering each other. And there was none of that. In fact, there was mostly stories about white women with a tokenized Black woman in the story who does get I kept waiting for her story. She got a key part in the end, towards the end. But I thought, okay, the few times that she actually got into what they actually did, then it was kind of interesting. But barely. I was like, it was syrupy and saccharine, and I kind of really hated it. And if I never pick up enough Danielle Steele ever, I'll be fine.
Right? It wasn't even saccharine though, because like I wasn't attached enough to the characters to.
No.
This one's like,
I did care when the things happened, and I think there's something to the abruptness when each of the people who died, because that's how it happened.
Yeah, I mean that part was how they died was real. So, I mean, it felt real.
Not my biggest complaint, but one of my complaints is when those things died. Yeah, it's like abrupt. If it were a secondary character that happened to, then I would have been fine with it. But when Audrey died, it was one paragraph that said Audrey died, and it was like, she was our main character for 50% of the book, and you're just going to give me her plane got shot down and she's dead and everybody's sad. It's like, could you have told me that from her perspective? Maybe that would have been more exciting.
Oh my goodness, yes.
When it happened, I was like, okay, I was done with the book by then anyway, like not actually, but in my mind I was done with it. But yeah, that was extremely frustrating. I was listening to it on the cloud library, and I had rented it from the library, and it had run out when I was about halfway through my hold on it, and I forgot to get it again. And if I hadn't been listening to it for this, I would have given up. I was like, I wouldn't have finished it.
Yeah.
But I did.
You listened at 1.5, Kaity?
I listened at 1.25 for most of it until the end, and then I jumped up to 1.5. And the other
I really wanted to say you wouldn't miss anything, but I didn't want to give away my bad opinion.
The reader was so slow.
He was terrible.
I made it to 1.6, and it finally made it feel like it was action. There was something happening.
And can we talk about, for those on the audiobook, can we talk about this a minute? if this is a woman, supposed to be a story about women empowering women, why is there a man narrating the audiobook?
Yeah, I was disappointed when I started and I heard that. My
Yeah.
other complaint about it is that he talks like he's narrating a documentary.
Yeah.
It's
So
like, this
that's why
isn't
like speeding it up was so much better.
it's not engaging at all.
No.
Now, I like documentaries, but this was not even, it's supposed to be a documentary. I don't know. I
he
kept
was no
asking
Richard
myself,
Attenborough.
No.
No.
No, I guess documentary is not what I'm thinking. I'm thinking of like,
but
when
no,
you
no,
go
you're
to
right. You're right. I
I'm
thought it
thinking
was
of
like,
when you go to like a museum and you watch like the little movie that you sit down and watch at a museum, and the voiceover, that kind of voice acting is exactly what it sounded like.
exactly. Okay. So I probably should have some questions so we're not all negative. Although, one last thing.
Can I say, oh, go
Yes.
ahead.
No, go ahead.
I enjoyed it enough that like I said, I was disappointed in it because I enjoyed the subject material and wanted it to be better because I enjoyed
So much.
learning about, like, it makes me want to go
Exactly.
actually learn about these people in real
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
So it was disappointing that it wasn't what I wanted. I kind of hated it, but at the same time, I kind of enjoyed it for that aspect of it. So it's not 100% bad. I would give it like 2 stars.
I gave it 3.
I would totally agree in that the subject matter I had not heard of, and I did want to go. I do want to go and look up maybe a real story about these women who served.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I just want to comment too. Like you frame it as it was sold to us as a book about empowering each other, women.
Yeah.
I found like the way that she described friendships happening completely unrealistic.
Oh, yeah.
About a huge group of women. This is a bullshit. You got to school and everybody's so happy and they're giggling together and just so happy.
And all they
nobody's
do is
giving
talk
each other-
about boyfriends.
Right. And nobody's giving each other side eye and like, assessing each other except Emma. But Emma doesn't even really do that. She's like, well, Prue said to be nice to you and we're friends, so I'll be nice to you, Alex.
Yeah.
This is fantasy romance at a junior high level.
Yes.
And I kept wondering, but I read reviews of people were like, oh, I couldn't put it down. And it was so intriguing. And it was like, who are these women?
Well,
are these the women that never grew out of Harlequin romances?
Okay, Harlequin romances are way better written than this. Like I stole some of my sister's books when I was a preteen, and those were much more engaging. I almost thought it was like to a 3rd grade reading level, honestly.
Oh yeah. It
felt like a very low reading level.
And I wondered, okay, so this is a woman who has written so many books, and when I'd seen her interviewed on Good Morning America years and years and years ago, how she has all these children and yet she gets up in the middle of the night to write these books. But I'm thinking, oh, she's writing pretty much the same book and just picking a different time. For this, it's almost like, here's my formula and I'm just going to plug in different time formats. And the cover
This didn't
of the book
seem
was
like
really
a hard
well
book
done.
to write.
No. It's like she phoned it in.
Sometimes I was wondering if she was just trying to hit a page count, like a word count or a page count. I mean, it's interesting in that review you read that they mentioned a ghostwriter, which is very possible. Like I hadn't thought about that because that's happens a lot with these like.
It's very possible she didn't actually write it. She just
advised it.
And maybe she's giving someone else a chance, but maybe that person needs to get somebody else as a mentor because this was not well done.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was terrible.
Just so that so we're not all negative. We already answered what did you like least about this book, but maybe we haven't. Maybe there's more. But first, was there anything that you did like? What did you like best? If there was a good thing, I think we might have talked about that, but just in case we didn't cover it, is there something you liked best about this book?
I liked the potential that it could have been.
Yeah.
I think that's the best I can do. There's not that
it really could have been
actually
it could have been an amazing book.
Yeah.
Given the subject matter. And maybe somebody else will be inspired to write the book that this should have been.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there are details I like. Like I liked Louise, and I love that she becomes a
I love her.
contessa. Like,
She is the one from the South, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
Um,
Louise was my favorite. I did love Louise, and I was disappointed that she wasn't written better. But
I like
mean,
Emma's. Not Emma. I didn't care about Emma. I liked Prue's family.
Yeah.
They seemed lovely.
And I liked the idea of Alex. You know, she's a completely unrealistic kind of person, I think, to be like, I hate everything and I'm gonna go be so good. It's like not everybody is so, you know, whatever. But so, I guess I kind of liked her a little bit. I found Audrey to be completely oatmeal, bland, boring, 100%.
Yep.
And Lizzie I liked. You know, I enjoyed her probably the most out of all the characters, because I think she was probably the most fleshed out.
Yeah.
That's it.
I suppose I like the idea of Ed also.
Yeah.
But I mean, there wasn't much there.
No. Okay. What other books did this remind you of?
It was like nothing I've read before.
I haven't read any other Danielle Steele. I kind of want to find out what like her best one is and listen just for comparison's sake to be like, this was a bad one or this is just what it is.
Yeah. Well, it'd be interesting. Maybe her debut or something was better.
Right.
What's interesting about that is that there was a few reviews on either Goodreads or Amazon that said that from people who do read her regularly, who said that this was a disappointment, that this was not like her typical stuff. But I can't
imagine she would be as popular as she was if this was what it was.
I hope not.
Yeah, but at the same time, I don't think everybody's always looking for some book that's, you know, 100% engaging all the time and super heavy. And I understand the idea of like a light read, but this seemed like a weird dichotomy of a heavy source material and a fun light read that just didn't work together. Like, choose a different like subject matter.
Yeah, it's supposed to be romance in a time of war, but it seemed very disingenuous.
Like when Prue goes around with each of them and they're all very like respectable women. Like there's no.
What did you say? There's not a slut among us.
That is my favorite line, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Which character did you like least? Did we touch on that yet?
Audrey. Yeah. Of the six main characters, I would have to say her.
I mean,
she
was weighed down for the longest time because she was taking care of her mother. So, you know, but at the same time, I mean, she went to nursing school. She tried to get a little bit of her own life.
But there was no struggle within her to be like, I wish I could go do this thing, but I have to take care of my mom. Instead, it was like, I'm taking care of my mom. I'm happy to do it. I'm a nurse now.
I don't date because I don't like to leave her at night.
See, there was no like, I wish I could live my nice, fun, young life, but I can't. Like, there was nothing.
See, she's not a strong person. So I don't see her really being able to do this job. I see her freaking out the first time the bombs go off and huddling in a corner and being kicked out. I don't see her character growing strength in reality.
And that is
thing.
That's a poor representation of caregivers because they're probably the strongest people you're ever going to meet.
But what I'm saying is the way she's written is someone who is doing it begrudgingly, not necessarily someone who enjoys it.
Well, she wasn't doing it begrudgingly. She's like, I'm going to nursing school so I can be better. Like, she was all in, but so poorly characterized. Yeah. I'd agree about Audrey.
I wasn't. Okay. This is terrible. I wasn't disappointed when she died, but then it was like, I was disappointed that was it. Like, it was like, oh, she died, but at the same time, I'm like, well, I guess I would have been madder if it was like one of the characters I was more attached to.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's just
Okay.
like, ugh.
What feelings did this book evoke for you?
It evoked a lot of things actually, because like this, I mean, to me, it reflected the stress we're living under, and we're living under a different
Mhm.
stress. But
Yeah.
when is this going to end? When is life going to be normal again? What
Mhm.
will
Yeah.
normal look like? The caregiving part, I had that in my life. Just like the stress and level of intensity to their and seriousness of their work, like those things all made me feel very connected to the characters. I just
Mhm.
wish it had been done better.
Yeah, I could agree with that.
What did you think of the book's length? If it's too long, what would you cut? If too short, what would you add?
It wasn't
Well,
too long. It was
no,
just too boring.
it was too poor. Like, a gifted short story author to give you way more depth and world building in 30 pages than
Yeah.
this book had in is it 250 pages in print?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, my
Um,
copy's at the studio. It's on.
It makes me think of I mean, it's a totally different, genre, but what did we read? The ocean at the end of the lane was like this big. It was tiny, but it
yeah,
had so much in it.
so much.
right? Completely
Yeah.
transported to that
Right.
existence. Whether, yeah. And
I forgot how
equally,
short that book was because I was so engrossed in it.
mhm,
I didn't pay any attention to length at all. Whereas this
Yeah.
one, it was short, but I still wished it ended sooner.
I wasn't
She didn't do
frustrated.
anything.
I wasn't frustrated by the length of it. It was just that, like, okay, well, I sort of felt like it's gonna be over soon. Is anything gonna happen?
yep, that's exactly what I was
You know what?
thinking.
It's the same feeling. Okay, the feeling I got listening. I listened to this book more than I read it. Was the same feeling as when you're in the middle of a good show and they stop for commercial and the commercial break is way too long, but you can't fast forward through it. You got to just. It's like, when are these commercials going to end so I can get to the real thing?
So the
Yeah.
book
That's
was
what I
the
felt.
commercial break.
Yeah, this book was one extra long commercial break.
Ooh,
I mean, but the thing is, there were times where where I really liked some of the characters or certain
mhm,
things, but there was just so tiny little nuggets that
yeah.
I just. Sorry, I don't mean to be. I'm trying. Everything comes around negative, and I'm trying to find something.
It's okay to just hate a book and neg
Yeah,
on
I
it.
really
Yeah.
hated this book.
We
I've never
all
hated a book
finished
so
the
much.
book. Yeah,
Huh?
we
We
all
all
finished the book. No, I hate The Old Man and the Sea a little bit more. I
Okay.
mean,
I love that book.
if I revisited it as an
It did
adult,
drag though.
yeah, and it's real short. I just hate it. Hate it so much. But I've hated that
It's
for
a man in a
longer.
boat. I mean, by himself. I mean, yeah.
If I had hated it for less time, maybe I would hate this book more. But I've hated that book for almost 20 years.
But
Yeah.
that's also sort of almost the mark of like a book. You're gonna remember that. I'm not gonna remember this book.
That's
Mm-mm.
true. That's a good point. Yeah.
Like, I'm not gonna hate it for years to come because I'm not gonna remember it.
No.
Mm-mm.
Like,
It
I
won't
hardly
lead.
remember it now. I finished it yesterday.
Yeah, it won't lead. Well, that's why I'm like, okay, I'm done. I can go back to the book I was enjoying. Um, and then I'm like, but if I do, I don't know if I will remember anything about it.
Yeah, it's all gonna slip through my head.
Yeah.
Okay,
It
so
has
here's
so much potential. Like you choosing this book on its description and synopsis, great choice.
Yeah,
could
we
have
were
been
so
great.
excited. You could go back and listen to our last book club at the end. We were like, this sounds great.
Yeah.
so
But
what really got me was not even the book. The cover page was so good. These women in uniform with a bomber behind him, and it looked like one of those black and white photos that were slightly tinted or colorized. I'm like, wow, that looks great, and that got my first attention. And I still love the cover.
yeah.
The inside. I wish the inside. Okay, Enough of that. Enough of that.
I guess
Sorry,
you
I'm
could
kicking a horse.
credit Danielle Steele in that she has a good marketing team.
She does.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a question to make you think.
Okay.
If you could put a playlist, a song, what songs does this book make you think of? If you could put a book group playlist to represent this,
I have no idea.
I don't know. I gotta think about this.
Is there
for
like
a minute.
a very poorly renowned symphony that just goes da 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 da?
A dirge.
Dirge. That.
Yeah.
I was thinking of some kind of fluffy, meaningless song from the 1950s.
Yeah.
That would be something. I can't think of an example. But you know, where they paint the life as really sweet and rosy.
Yeah.
And you know, that's not real. That's not what people lived.
Yeah.
Oh, what character, if there was a character in the book you would like to meet in real life, was there?
I'd like to meet Ed. He sounded handsome and he was Irish.
Yeah. I agree.
He was Irish.
That's what I did.
I'd also like to meet the Count. He sounded cool.
Yeah. Oh, the Count sounded very nice. Yeah, the Count and the Countess in like 10 years when they're settled and they have lots of beautiful children and she's living a glamorous intellectual's life. I want to fast forward and visit with
I was thinking that too when I finished the book. I'm like, it would be nice to hear what happened to exactly what you were saying, like Louise and
like
whoever her.
Yeah.
But I don't want to read any more of it. I just want to know what happened.
No.
I would read a book of just Louise's story.
Yeah, that would have been far more interesting.
Because she got the best part. Okay, so Louise in the story, part of her character development was like not at all. I felt like, and what with Danielle, I thought she was a token Black person, and at first I thought, why did she include her? Because she didn't really connect her to the other women very well, and I really wanted to hear more about her. So I thought her part of the story when it finally came about was the best nugget. But I felt like. And then I asked myself, of course, what would Danielle Steele know anything about the life of a Black woman or a Black woman in that time period? It was like, I really wish that had been fleshed out. I wish she would have been given a bigger piece of this, rather than she was sort of shoved to the side until someone said, oh, you have 6 women. Oh yeah, I forgot about this person. And then she got a part.
That's kind of why I mentioned, like, it would have been far more interesting if you had picked any one of them and made it the story of whoever, just focus. We just need to focus, because it was also like, the concept of like the flying nurses and flying into, battle zones and doing all these exciting things. Like that sounded interesting, but we got like maybe 2 scenes of that happening. Like we were with, I don't even remember who it was. Like we flew a couple times with like 2 different people. Yeah. But other than that, it was boring. Like I would have liked far more of that kind of stuff.
They didn't hardly talk. If that was the thing that brought them together in the first place, besides training in San Francisco for a couple of people. But yeah, they could have, she really needed a story more about what they actually did.
How about this missed nugget?
How about
How about this missed nugget? You have this dynamism of Lizzie and Audrey being best friends, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, what's her name? Alex comes in, and now Lizzie and Alex are deeply bonded. Why was there no drama here? Like when there was friend dynamic happens, there's jealousy, there's finding your place with each other. There's none of it.
There was no
I mean,
like nothing about real women's
and that would have been some meltdown.
Yeah, there wasn't anything. There were no scenes, there were no, vignettes of any sort of, like, yeah, they go through this experience in this traumatic thing, but there's no bonding. It's like, oh, I gave her a hug. She was sad for a day.
Yeah.
That's it.
Not you just had this world rocking thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, at the end, is it Lizzie's other brother dies? Like at the very end, it's like, oh, do you need to hit a body count? Like, why are we killing him at the very end of the book?
Exactly.
It's like, oh,
And
she's sad again.
He wasn't even the character. It's just like, yeah, they needed a certain page count. The publisher probably required a minimal page count, and she needed one more paragraph just to push it over the printing paper. I don't know. He wasn't even a real character in the book. He was just an honorable mention, barely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you think? Let's just assume that the ghostwriter didn't do it, that it really was the author.
Okay.
What do you think the author's purpose was in writing this book? What ideas was she trying to get across?
Well, okay, she's writing about the young women of the time when she was a baby. So they have to have been mythologized a little bit in her mind.
Was she a baby? I think
she's 78.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, so, World War II.
So she would have been like, she would have been born right in the midst of the war. So like I think maybe she was trying to pay homage to this the myth of these women.
Mm-hmm.
And sell books. I mean, she's getting older.
I think she's
not going to have.
She's trying to get some money.
She's building the legacy for her. I think 9 children. Is it? She's dedicated to them.
Yeah. Sure. I wonder if she knew someone or how the whole story even intrigued her to even pick this as a subject matter. If, like you said, if she was a baby, if she'd heard stories like when I was growing up, I heard stories about the Depression from my great grandmother, what it was like for her to live as a young adult during the Depression,
mm-hmm.
Great Depression. So those kind of stories, are interesting to me. I wonder if someone else
to your family history,
or maybe someone else brought the subject up as a suggestion because it's.
Mm-hmm.
If you could hear the same story from another person's point of view, who would you choose? I mean, we kind of talked about it a little bit, but.
Yeah, I think
I would
I don't know.
I like Louisa. Louisa's definitely a top choice. Maybe Emma. It would be my other choice.
Yeah, I would say any of them.
I would not have chosen Audrey to be the longest.
I don't know why it was. Like and they needed some sort of character to build
create
off
sympathy
and to see them grow and this is how I entered into this thing.
She didn't really grow.
You couldn't just jump into it. But
do we think she really grew though?
No, I'm saying to watch her story develop to the point where she was like, I want to do this thing. It could have been any one of their want to, I've developed up until the point where I want to do this thing.
Yep.
Hers was the most boring.
Yep.
Like we could have seen Lizzie's. She was defying her parents and she was, going against their wishes, and her, her fiance dies, and that's all. Those are far more exciting things than Audrey, who sits, and we see a little bit of that because she's sort of the co-main character, but we could have focused on one person.
Yeah, they all had dynamism that would have been interesting.
Yeah,
wasn't there one? Was there one character that was a lesbian?
No, but you know what I really thought would be interesting?
I thought there was though.
Emma and Lizzie. No, Emma and Lizzie both. Oh my gosh, you just gave her so much more credit than.
No, I mean,
so
it's considered a wholesome, so I don't think her fan base would like that. But that would have been interesting. Would that not have been interesting?
Yeah. Okay. So Emma and Lizzie both lost the love of their lives, and they were not interested in dating, supposedly, at all. Of course, they're the two that end up paired off. Mm-hmm. But just for a flicker of a moment, I was like, what if they found comfort in each other?
There was one joke at the very end, when they're all like together again. They're like,
Oh, what are you
"Hey,
gonna
we're
marry
getting
each other?"
married," and it's like, "You're gonna get married to each other? That would be silly." It's like, okay,
Yeah, exactly.
that was it.
See,
No,
I
no
thought
lesbian.
that the gal, I can't think of her name, from England, who had the really rough life.
Emma.
I thought Emma
Emma-
might have been.
No, she ends up with Prue's brother.
Oh,
She delivers
See?
the diary.
but how much better would the story have been if that had also been in there? But that would never have been a Danielle Steele book then.
You could have included a billion other things that would have made this book more interesting.
That's true. Like, how about, yeah.
You know what? Even though there was tokenism, but that's probably historically accurate that there was probably only one Black woman in it.
Yeah.
Or a very limited number. I was waiting for more racism. I have to say, I was worried there'd be more racist tropes in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean,
So good
that
job
would have.
on not doing that.
Or maybe her
When you
editor cut some of it out.
Maybe.
When you said that, I was thinking sort of the opposite. Is like, I would have liked to see more of her struggle as the only Black woman, a little bit more racism, not on the author's part, but in the characters, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that would have given you something. Instead, it was like, it's fine, you're here.
Yeah, because that's
Okay, cool.
not just because these girls are from the North. We know that does not absolve them of racist ideals.
Yeah, but they're like, this is great, we're fine with it. And then the only thing you get is like a snippet of, I think it was like they exchanged looks with each other, but then they were like, this is fine. And it was okay, great, cool. Yeah, there could have been more there.
There could have been. And I'm telling you, there's not a lot. There wasn't a lot to the stories, so there really isn't a lot to discuss. There is a question. What do you think about the author's research? Was it easy to see where the author got her information? Were the sources credible? I don't think she did much research at all.
I think she figured out the names of a couple different airplanes.
Yeah,
and a couple different places and bases, and just plugged in the rest.
Yep.
That's all.
I feel like she did as much research as one could do on Wikipedia.
Yeah. What kind of planes did they fly in World War II? Okay.
Maybe she just read. I feel like she wrote a book based on one Wikipedia entry. So, I mean, yeah. Discussions for a memoir, short story. I mean, this could have been a series. It could have been a series of short stories, honestly, because the way they were so disconnected.
It would have been better because that would have provided the focus that we were all looking for.
Yeah. It really did feel like short stories that she tried, but yeah, she didn't even really try to. They had a few things in common. Again,
short story writers.
Short story writers are better.
Does not have the artfulness of a short story in any fashion.
No,
it's a outline that they put like prepositions and art and verbs between, so just string together.
That's why I'm saying like it sounded like a screenplay.
Yeah, no, I kept imagining it would be like 1,000 times better if you put it in the hands of other creatives. Like, okay, this is a time of amazing clothing.
Mm-hmm.
So in their civilian lives, you could have given us just a little more description of their clothing. Like, I can only think of a couple of mentions of clothing, like the suit that she wears to the first day of nursing school.
Mm-hmm.
And the clothes they pick out when they go to Hawaii.
Yeah. And then their drab light suits.
They wear that when they went to the movie.
Or when they went to like, wait a minute, what country did they go to? Did they go to England?
Yeah.
I can't even remember what country they went.
They're based out of England.
So, they must have, I know shopping was difficult, but I've read in other books of historical fiction of this time period that were much better. They described what they called the apple cart upset, which is, it took me a while to figure out what that was. This was from a different book. That during that time period, because clothing was difficult to get. And she could have even said clothing was difficult to get, something to at least.
That's why she's borrowing her mom's suit or whatever.
Yeah. You know, that
Of course, war wasn't on yet at that point.
what they would do is
Right.
they would go to, they would, you know, like we have the yarn swap. They would have a clothing swap where the different groups of women would come together and try to swap, because you've been wearing the same 3 pieces of clothing for a couple years and now you need something fresh. It's still old, but it's new to you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So-
Wouldn't that have been more interesting to like have them do that one night, you know?
Yeah. Here's these 6
Or
ones.
just
And you
like-
never.
Any
Go ahead.
sort of like sleepover night, you know what I mean? Like showing them having fun with each other. And instead it was like, we're all tired, we're going to bed, which is like, honestly, I'm sure. But
Yeah.
it would have been fun if we had seen them on an off day, go do something fun together, all 6 of them. Like they were hardly ever all together.
They were never
at once.
all, no. I mean, and you
That
never
would have
even
been
got
more
more
fun.
than, yeah. There was nothing really bonding the 6 ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, hardly. And there were so many flight nurses there besides just them that it was
Yep.
like the fact that we're focused on these 6, and then at the end it's like all 6 were together again. It's like, well, actually all 200 or whatever, you know, we're all
Right?
together at the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
So to summarize, in our review of Flying Angels by Danielle Steele, there was no real substance. She did not connect the characters. It was too short. It was too short for character development, but no, not too short. But then she just did nothing. Someone else
Yeah.
want to summarize this? Because I think I'm running out of, there just wasn't even enough
I
to
think
summarize.
I think we've said what we've said, you know.
Yeah.
I think we're just at this point saying the same things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is what it is.
I tried
it
to
was
find more
fine,
questions,
it wasn't
but-
good.
There wasn't enough content to really have questions about.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Hmm.
We don't have to love everything.
nope.
Mm-mm. Nope. But hey, I read a Danielle Steele and I can check that off. I was going to try to get pass this on to my mother-in-law, and she goes, "Oh, I would never read her."
Oh, really?
She goes, "I'm not into any of that stuff that she read." And she has another author that she highly recommends that I think I will do when it's my pick next time. So
Okay.
unless
Well,
one
I
of
guess
y'all
we
want
could-
to go ahead.
Oh, I
Who's
was going to
next?
say, I guess we could jump into what else people have read.
Yeah. I have been enjoying, I'll look up the author's name. He wrote A Man Called Uwe, and the book I finished recently was My Grandmother Says She's Sorry. Oh, my grandmother asked me to tell you she's sorry. And then I'm reading Britt Murray Was Here. So that is Frederick Bachman. They are amazing books. A Man Called Uwe, which I read years ago, is this like disgruntled, angry man, and then how he's like completely separated from his community, but he eventually opens his heart and like becomes 100% connected with everyone around him. And that transition is so beautiful. And I like cried so much while I was reading that book. My grandmother asked me to tell you she's sorry. Same thing, but a really interesting point of view. It's told from this like incredibly intelligent 8-year-old's point of view. So it has that like child innocence and lack of understanding, but you still are able to like connect with the adults' perspectives as well. It's so good. Britt Marie was here. She takes this very prickly, hard to be sympathetic character from my grandmother asked me to tell you she's sorry, and now is telling her story. She's this completely ignored woman who like her sister died in a tragic accident when they were little girls, like 11 or 12, and then her mother like made sure the world knew that the wrong child survived. She was in between 2 brothers who loved her. She marries the wrong brother who mistreats her and cheats on her. And now her marriage ends in the first book, and now she's on her own trying to like find a place in the world, but she's still this like wimpy, attached wife who doesn't go anywhere without her husband, doesn't do anything without her husband, but she's trying to like find herself without acknowledging that's what she's doing. And it's really, really good. I would give 10 out of 10 to all Frederick Bachman so far, which is amazing because by the time I get to the third novel by the same author, I'm usually like so bored with their style. So Frederick Bachman, anything written by him. I try to read authors in like the order they wrote their books, though. But you could jump into any of the books so far, the three that I read. And then I'm exercising, I'm calling it both like an exercise of control and discipline. There is a book that's been around a long time. I stumbled upon it in November in a like Hispanic Heritage Month display. The name is completely escaping me.
Do you want to circle back?
Like, yeah, I have to come back to it. But yeah, so go on. What have you guys been reading?
Well, I was going to mention that I've only heard good things about that author that you were saying. Everybody else in my family has read a man called Uwe, except for me, apparently. So,
it's so good.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I haven't read anything really this month. I have a book that I picked up when we were camping in Sequoia's Kings Canyon back a couple years ago, which I was digging through boxes of books, and I found the other day, and it's a collection of 22 stories of John Muir's writings. So it's called The Wild Muir. I mean, John Muir wrote a billion things. This is just a collection of 22 of his stories that I picked up one day when I was camping, because I was like, this seems like a fun book to read. And I think I read it all at one point because it was in my trailer for a long time, but I just picked it up the other day because it's small little sections of stories that you can read in, if you have 5 minutes to sit down and read. So that is the only other thing that I've really been touching on this month.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's fun.
I like buying books at the national park, and then I never get back to them.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Karin, anything else?
Yeah, so I've been reading 2 books. I mean, I went back and finished up some of the books by Leigh Bardugo that I'd started from her Grishaverse. But the thing I really enjoyed, and I haven't seen the movie yet, but I like film noir, so a book in the noir genre was really intriguing. So I read Nightmare Alley by, let me see, who's the author? The author is William Lindsay Gresham, and what intrigued me about it, because the movie is a Guillermo del Toro
I love
movie,
Guillermo,
and I love Guillermo, but I haven't seen it because I wanted to read the book, and the book is like, you can see it's like a black and white movie in your head. You could totally hear it and read it, and the guy's bad news. And some of it is really racy. I'm like 1946, and they are graphic. I'm like, this had to be on a bunch of banned book lists because
that must have been
of the
before.
I'd
say that must have been before 1941 to 1945 when our nurses were at work.
It was 1946.
Oh, that's when they got racy.
So it begins with an extraordinary description of a carnival show geek. He literally was biting the heads off of chickens. So alcoholic and abject, and the object of the voyeuristic crowd's gleeful disgust and derision. Going about his work at a county fair, young Stan Carlisle is working as a carny, and he wonders how a man could fall so low. There's no way in hell, he vows, that anything will ever happen to him. And since Stan is clever and ambitious and not without a useful streak of ruthlessness, soon enough he's going places. He has a mentalist. I mean, he's bad news, but you can't stop watching him in your head. It's like this movie that plays out. So I can't even imagine what the movie's gonna be like, because the book was just like, wow, it really sucked you in. That, and I am reading Grady Hendrix, because now that I'm into the horror genre, the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. I'm a fan of Grady Hendrix. This is like the second book of his that I'm reading. The first one was that Final Girl Support Group. There's there's humor in it, and there's some of the characters you like, you know what they're gonna do, but you can't stop. But it's very satisfying. So this one is about a book, two different book clubs. One that's very rigid, and one where they just like to drink wine and hang out with each other and read books about horror. So, and killing and murder and that kind of thing. It's like if they were all listening to murder podcasts. So, that's what I'm reading, listening to these days.
I found the title of my book.
Okay.
Like Water for Chocolate, which is
I've been out that one
a long time. So it's written, the chapters go month by month. So I'm going to read one chapter the first week of the month. And it has it says a novel in monthly installments with recipes, romances, and home remedies. So I'm going to try some of the recipes as I go.
Yay.
Well, that sounds cool.
So that's the restraint, is not just reading the whole book. And the discipline is actually doing this every month.
Yeah.
But it's wonderful. January, they were making these like rolls with sausages and seasoning and like herbs in them. Haven't tried it yet, though.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay. It's my turn to pick our next book. And I wanted to pick something that was like a romance. Because February,
because we didn't get one this
Valentine's Day, right?
Right.
So I went to, I was in Target and I was like, oh, they have a book section I forget about. So I wandered around and then I was looking online. My search terms were good romance that's not too smutty. Because that was like exactly what I was looking for, because a lot of romance can be, and I was like, it's either good or it's terrible, and it's either really sexy or it's, so I tried to find a balance. I have no idea if I got there with this pick, but it is called Heard It in a Love Song by Tracey Garvis Graves. You can see the cover drew me in. It's like this hippie looking lady with flowers growing out of her head. It says Layla Hilding is a 35 and recently divorced, struggling to break free from the past, her glory days as a lead singer in a band and a 10-year marriage to a man who never put her first. Layla's newfound independence feels a lot like loneliness. Then there's Josh, the single dad whose daughter attends the elementary school where Layla teaches music. Recently separated, he's still processing the end of his 20-year marriage to his high school sweetheart. He chats with Layla every morning at school and finds himself thinking about her more and more. Equally cautious and confused about dating in a world that favors apps over meeting organically, Layla and Josh decide to be friends with the potential for something more. Sounds sensible and way too simple, but when two people are on the rebound, is it heartbreak or happiness that's just a love song away?
I like it.
Yeah. So it seemed not too heavy, fun, cute. That's kind of what I was hoping for February. So, Heard It in a Love Song by Tracey Garvis Graves.
Okay. Looking forward to it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let us know what you thought about The Flying Angels. If you have different opinions than us or the same opinions, doesn't matter. We want to hear them. If you read it, let us know, because I always enjoy hearing feedback from other people as well about the same books, because sometimes I know the three of us tend to think very similarly about things like that. So I would love to hear another opinion that if it was different or again the same. And I guess other than that, we'll see you guys next month for our next book.
Okay. Woo.
Okay, bye everyone. Strings Unraveled is a production of Strings and Things Studio, with Anne Leckervin-Cazzoli, Kaity Von Rader-Fraker, and Karin Mometh. Recorded and edited by Kaity Von Rader-Fraker. Find us online at stringsandthingsstudio.com or on Facebook or Instagram at Strings and Things Studio. You can email us at stringsandthingsinfo@gmail.com.